What is foreign policy? And simply stated, it is nothing but an extension of the domestic policy. And the objective is to create a conducive international environment to further national interests. Our external affairs minister, before he became the external affairs minister, he was then with Tata Group. He said, and he I think wrote in his book also, beautiful summation. He says the objective of Indian foreign policy is to cultivate the US, study ties with Russia, manage China, enthuse Japan, and engage Europe. I mean, he's leaving out other important countries, but in 1.5 lines, he prescribes the thrust of India's foreign policy. What makes the foreign policy effective is, first of all, the big question that we need to address and get out of the way. Is it, what is the essential prerequisite? Is it the hard power? Is it the soft power? Or is it both? A lot hinges on the geography of a country, on the level of ambition, on the security challenges, on the size of a country. You know, if you're a small country and maybe landlocked, maybe otherwise small, for you to acquire hard power becomes that much more difficult. There are a number of countries which even do not have a military, like Costa Rica, Mauritius, Islands, Micronesia, a number of Pacific Island countries. So they position themselves, and it's all about positioning. It's all about how you present yourself. They position themselves as peace loving, multi ethnic, safe, culturally vibrant societies. But in the normal course, it is all about hard power. And so it is all about hard power. I'm not a fan of Mao, but you all remember Mao having said that power flows from the barrel of the gun and also the pen, which we democracies understand, but not totalitarian societies. So at the end of the day, it is a hard power, and if you have soft power, that is icing on the cake, and that makes hard power more palatable. So my question is, what, when do you? I hope you agree that hard power is very important, but how do you acquire hard power? There is something which goes to the heart, the foundation of hard power or power. What would that be? Karthika said military capacity building. For military capacity building, yes, J.K. Balthil, bravo. Economy. At the end of the day, or the bottom line, my dear friends, is economy, economy, and economy. You get respect when you have hard power, you build strong offenses, you have the offensive capabilities, defensive capabilities, but at the bottom line is economy. And that is something that is absolutely the prerequisite. And one thing good about the Indian diplomacy is that early on we understood the importance of the economy, and we are one of the very few diplomatic services which gives so much of emphasis to economy or economic relations. Now, what is the role of a diplomat? And I don't want to get into the details, but I have a very interesting quote by a 17th century British author who said, "An ambassador is an honest gentleman sent to lie abroad for the good of his country." How many of you would agree that you are sent out to lie for the country? Shreya says yes. Shreya says yes. Pota says, I agree, sir. Anybody who disagrees, who dare disagrees. I mean, I challenge anybody who dare disagrees with me, because Frank knows what I do to people who disagree with me. Is there anybody who disagrees?
Kamal has disagreed.
Kamal, Kamal says do. Yes, he
Kamal.
agrees.
He said
Okay.
this. Kamal Mishra says disagreed.
Okay, Kamal Mishra, where are you? How dare you?
Yes, sir. So I think it's an open word now. So a lot of things are in open. Like no matter how much you hide, like things come in open via different mediums. So I think ultimately ambassadors have to be accountable to truth. So
What?
they will resist some of
What?
it.
Ambassadors are gift of God to mankind. What do you mean truth and accountable and things like that? They are not normal people. They have horns on their head. All right. Thank you, Kamal. Take a bow. Compliments. This statement is absolutely wrong in the modern context. There was a time when they said ambassadors are honest gentlemen. Well, at those times, women were not allowed. So that is one. Lie for the country. For heaven's sake, the credibility of a diplomat is as good as his last statement. And you are absolutely right, Kamal, that in today's digital era, it takes maybe a few seconds to know whether somebody is bluffing or is actually correct. And the diplomatic service the world over is very small and the memories are very long. So please, one thing that you have to appreciate, I think in all walks of life, but particularly in the area of diplomacy, that you are never caught on facts. I always like to say that facts are sacrosanct. There is nothing called alternative fact, even though my good friend Donald Trump used to believe in alternative facts. But opinions are yours. You can form opinions, but make sure that credibility is a very important factor for any diplomat. Now let's move on. Yes, Jaydev.
Sir, China's influence is growing over the global institutions. So how to tackle that, sir?
Guys, thank you very much. It has been a lovely session with you all.
Okay. So today we are going to talk about an overview of India's foreign policy, right? So the ambassador took you through, a whole list of items. He took you through a lot of aspects that he touched upon. I'm going to try and touch upon some aspects that he did not touch upon. Okay. What are the salient features of India's foreign policy as it stands right now? What has changed over the last 7 years? What is different? So yeah, we are being far more assertive. Many of you had this issue of, China is this, China is that, China is whatnot. Despite all the problems we seem to have with China, be it Doklam, be it Ladakh, be it Leh, or whatever else it is, clearly there is animosity between the two countries. In the recent past, it hasn't been this bad. The last time probably it was like this was during the 60s war. After that, it hasn't been like this, right? Despite all of that, the two leaders of both the respective countries have very cordial relations. They can pick up the phone and speak to each other at any point in time. Of course, an interpreter is required. They can't do it directly. But they have a very, very strong bond and they have a very strong relationship. And we saw this happening after the two summits as well, right? But don't forget that Xi Jinping is on a path of his own. He wants to be the greatest president that the Republic of China has ever seen. And he wants to leave a legacy behind that is going to put down even people like Mao and others. And he could possibly be going into a mode of self-destruction because of what he's doing with Taiwan, because of what he's doing with Hong Kong and all these other aspects. The only issue is there is no one who can stand up to China right now, not even the US. Because the Chinese are very smart and they have long-term vision and they work towards that vision, and the kind of government that they have there, they can freely take those decisions as well. And having been to China, I would honestly say that despite all of that, definitely wouldn't want to be living in China and definitely wouldn't want to be a Chinese. And we've been far more assertive of late from a diplomatic standpoint. That is one. We have been led by a strong leader who has taken very keen interest in foreign policy, and despite us having foreign ministers, he's led from the front with regards to foreign policy. So when the head of state has such level of engagement with others and takes such keen interest, the other leaders also would like to take the same kind of interest. Our leader has not been snubbed anywhere. There has been no issue of him being, made to wait or being brushed aside or any of those aspects. A single largest party being in power at the center as well has ensured that there has been a uniform foreign policy. This is another aspect. Coalition politics in the past has had an impact on India's foreign policy. That is not the case now. Since there is a single party which is in majority, it makes things simpler with regards to foreign policy as well. And it works for us. India is not Israel. And there are elements both within and outside India who act in a way which is detrimental towards national integrity and national security. Whereas Israel is a very different country. When it comes to national security and national integrity, they ensure that they all speak in one voice. And with the change in government, there is no change in foreign policy. It remains the same. That can't be said about India. Right? So these are some things that are working in our favor. Another aspect is we've been very clear about what we want and what we don't want. There is no appeasement. Despite the sanctions, despite CAATSA, LEMOA, and all the other sanctions that the US, despite the sanctions that the US has put in place, India has very categorically stated that we want S-400, we will have S-400, and we will take S-400. The Americans tried very hard to ensure that we buy the THAAD from them, but our armed forces were very clear about how the THAAD is not good enough for our security. So we need S-400. Continue to engage with Russia significantly, despite us having a much stronger relationship with the United States today. So it's not a question of non-alignment. It's a question of aligning with everyone who wants to align with us. Another clear thing, when we talk about how we've been very clear about what we want, for the first time, we dehyphenated Israel and Palestine, something that has never been done. Every time we spoke about Israel or Palestine, we had to ensure that they are both combined. We could do this because, again, it comes down to strong political leadership at the center locally, domestically. And we have also categorically stated that national interest, national security above everything else. There is no two ways about it. No talks with Pak means no talks with Pak. No ties with Pak means no ties with Pak. You've taken some strong decisions. One of the decisions for abrogation of special status of Jammu and Kashmir was also this, to send out a lesson to Pakistan. There is an international relations angle to that as well. So strong domestic policies also have helped in ensuring that we've had a stronger neighborhood policy. These are our strengths, our goodwill, the fact that we are so different from China, the fact that we are led by a strong leader, the fact that we are sure and certain about what we want and what we don't want, and the fact that we can be equally engaged as well as equidistant from any of the powers in the world and any of the nations in the world. So these are some things that are working for us.
Sir, does ethics and morality play a role in foreign policy making?
As far as India is concerned, it does. But for the Chinese, it doesn't matter at all. Chinese will use tactics like honey trapping. Chinese will use tactics like paying money, bribing, all kind of coercive methods Chinese will use.
Sir, my question was, as you were saying that US is slightly moving out of West Asia. So what sort of engagement India needs to look for in West Asia, apart from oil? As we are already shifting towards renewable energy, what kind of engagement can we look forward?
Shubhratri, see you next Thursday at 7:30 p.m.